Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome to the first video of 2020. Happy New Year to you all. If you're watching this in April or May, then welcome. What better way to start the year, I thought, than with a Seiko review. Not just any old Seiko, but the most blingy Seiko currently on the market, the SRPC 44, aka the Gurtle, the Golden Turtle. Now this watch doesn't belong to me, it belongs to a friend of mine, the mysterious Mr. X. If you are a regular on the channel, you will no doubt be familiar with the name. He has a phenomenal collection of high-end Swiss luxury pieces. If you haven't watched the collection video we made in the middle of last year, I'll leave a link to it up there. I highly recommend it. We had a great time making that video. So what is a man with a dozen Rolex, Omega and Patek Philippe in his collection doing with a humble Seiko? Well, he had never owned a Seiko, and I suggested that for $500 or less, they're not perfect as will be discussed, but you do really get a great watch from a Seiko dive watch. And I sent him out on a mission to pick up one for himself. So what did he do? He picked up the most blingy and gaudy one he could find, the Golden Turtle. Now Mr. X has loaned me a lot of watches over the last couple of years, many of those Rolex and Omega for review on the channel. Indeed, he often reminds me that my top video, I'll never buy a Rolex Submariner, was made using his Rolex Submariner, so I thought I would give him a little present to start the new year, or more specifically, I would give his Gertle a little present. So I picked up a brand new Golden Jubilee from STRAPCODE to make his gaudy watch even gaudier. So let's flip the camera, get into the Golden Turtle review, and then fit that Jubilee. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about price. You know I love talking about money. $265 or less, a little under that on Amazon.com. I've added this one to my Amazon selection. I'll leave a link in the description of the video. I reckon that is a pretty good price. I talked about this last week. With the SKX being discontinued, these Turtles and Samurais are looking like the watches to go for. They're looking like certainly better value than they did when the SKX was around. There's the Gertle. So 45mm is the headline diameter dimension, but don't let that put you off necessarily. 13mm thick, 47mm lug tip to lug tip. Seiko are pretty special in the way that they can make a big watch feel like a small watch. Cushion case obviously helps, beautiful smooth edges to this case, but a short lug to lug means even guys with average or smaller than average wrists need not fear that 45mm dimension. This one wears a treat. 22mm lug width, and on the supplied rubber strap, not for long, this one weighs in at 113 grams. So a good size watch, but nice and comfortable on wrist. 316L stainless steel case, crown, bezel and hardware on the rubber silicone strap. However, it is some form of IP coated gold. Seiko don't specify. There's a couple of little nicks here and there on this one. Mr. X does wear his watches and he wallops them around just as much as I do, so it's beginning to wear off in places, but should look good and blingy for many months and years to come. Bezel action on this one, 120 click unidirectional rotating dive time. We've got an aluminium insert with a lume pip, again gold and black tones to match the watch. There's no backplay, no bounce there. It's quite light, but it does have that nice snicky Seiko feel. Hardlex crystal, now that will appear for sure in the moans and niggles section later on. No anti-reflective coating on there either, as you can see. Hardlex is Seiko's own proprietary mineral crystal, purported to be harder than regular mineral crystal, but not nearly as hard as sapphire. My preference is always for sapphire. You can upgrade this later if you want to, but I'd much rather Seiko charged an extra $40 and supplied it with sapphire crystal than with this Hardlex stuff. Zoomed in on the dial and it's all classic Seiko stuff here. Classic Seiko handset, nice legible printed indices, and nothing quite lines up. Have a look at the chapter ring. Doesn't sit with the index at 12 o'clock or 6 o'clock. That's how you know it's a genuine Seiko. Big index up there at the 12 o'clock. Similarly, large indices at the 6 and the 9, and the circular indices everywhere else. And they're covered in Seiko's Lumi Bright lume. I'll put up the lume video now. Seikos always punch well above their weight in terms of their lume. This is as good as C3 or C1 Superluminova for sure. Seikos always do well in my episodes of Lume Wars. You can expect to see the Gertle in the Lume Wars battle coming next week. Now the logo is just printed under that big index up at the 12 o'clock. The Prospex X, because this is part of their Prospex Professional Dive series, printed beneath the pinion, automatic and divers 200 meters, because let's not forget, this is an ISO rated dive watch, 200 meters air divers rated, and Japan movement. These ones made in the Malaysian factory, but the movement is Japanese. Now the day date complication at the 3 o'clock there in a simple beveled cutout heralds the inclusion of the Seiko NH36 in-house movement. The NH36, unlike the 7S26 and 7S36, not only hand winds, but it also hacks, i.e. you can set the second hand precisely, which you weren't able to do with the SKX. 24 jewel hacking and hand winding, as I've discussed. Reliable, rugged, roughly 40-hour power reserve. You've seen dozens and dozens of these labelled as NH36s in pretty much every micro brand under $500 that I've reviewed on the channel over the last 3 years. They're a kind of default choice. There's an argument you don't really need anything else in your watch. Case back is clean and simple. The Seiko Wave on a pseudo medallion there in the middle. Again, Prospex X, advertising the movement, the 4-hour movement, and the fact that it's air divers. 200 meters, screw down crown, screw down case back, obviously assisting with that 200 meter rating. And I must say the Seiko standard supplied silicone straps are super comfortable. I think I got enough alliteration in that sentence to last a lifetime. Matching hardware. Now Mr. X has complained about this hardware. It will feature in the moans and niggles section. That is quite sharp edged and quite prominent. It is easy to scrape that off things. Not necessarily doing damage to the hardware, but doing damage to the things that you scrape it on. Anyway, also similarly IP coated and with the Seiko logo punched in the buckle for good measure. And on wrist, it really is a big watch that wears like a much, much smaller watch. Got a lot of wrist presence, not only because it's 45mm, but because this one is bright gold, but super comfortable. These are excellent straps. If you've ever dealt with one of the hideous straps on the SKX, this is nothing like them at all. Really, really a big step up. That's why I think there's some value in this watch at $265 or thereabouts for sure. That's the proper overhead shot. I've got a 7-inch wrist for your reference. It's a dive watch, so it's going to be legible, and that is pretty legible. Well-proportioned dial, well-proportioned hands, well-proportioned indices. Everything just works. Seiko have been making dive watches since the 1960s. They know a thing or two about it. They're pretty good at it. That's why I recommended that Mr. X pick one up for himself. And that's it in some natural light outside today. Again, as mentioned, no anti-reflective coating on that piece of Hardlex, but it's still pretty legible just because it's so clean and it's a black dial with those loomy bright toned indices. I do like the gold handset on there as well. Lollipop second hand with the back end blacked out means that little lollipop just seems to hover over the black dial, which is a nice touch. That's it on wrist. You can see the side profile. Not a huge amount of curvature to the case, but the case is beautifully curved in its own way, meaning these watches wear really comfortably. The crown down at the 4 o'clock means it doesn't dig into your wrist. Super comfortable, these cushion case divers. So my moans and niggle list with the Seiko Gurtle is a small one. I reckon this is a lot of fun and a very nice package for $265 US. I've seen these floating around the 400 Aussie dollar mark recently as well. So if you're over this end of the world, shop around for the best price. Ceramic bezel insert would have taken it up a notch, but I'm not complaining at $265 that they've used aluminium. Hardlex, as I said, I'd pay extra for a piece of sapphire, and you can see what he means. That is a fairly sharp-edged and intrusive buckle there. You can see that catching on something and doing more damage to the something than to the buckle. But that's easily dealt with. It's upgrade time. Not necessarily a cheap upgrade though. These are around $150 US for the top spec one, the Jubilee all gold that I have here. I'll leave a link to that one in the description of the video as well. But it's Mr. X, so he's worth it. Let's peel off some stickers. And look at that. My eyes, my eyes. Several tones of gold here. The buckle doesn't quite match either of the IP finishes on the Jubilee, but that hardly matters. That's not really the point. STRAPCODE bracelets, always nice, high quality, proper screw links. Fantastic spring bars in these as well. I mean, look at those guys. Those are proper quality spring bars. You'd expect that at 150 bucks though, wouldn't you? Plenty of micro adjusts, and of course it is a proper scissor clasp, a proper machined clasp. Let's get this one sized up and fitted. And that, my friends, is some next level Gurtle action. Look at that thing. Obviously it goes from a $265 watch to a $415 watch in one fell swoop, but I can't remember too many $400 watches on the channel with more wrist presence than this one. Whether it's the kind of presence you were after or not, well, that is up to you, but I think this will suit Mr. X to a T. Back outside in the sunshine, and doesn't that thing look glorious? Like I said, you've got a different mixture of IP gold finishes across the watch, the bracelet, the Jubilee links, the clasp, etc, etc, but I'm not complaining. I think it looks pretty spectacular. On wrist, because it's a Jubilee, nice and comfortable, built-in flexibility and a bit of jingly jangly rattle, but not nearly as much as you get if it was made by Seiko and not STRAPCODE. So happy new year, folks. Delighted to be able to start with this one in 2020 as my first review of the year. I can't quite believe it's taken me 3 years to finally get around to reviewing the Turtle, but what a turtle. So there you have it. If you like your Seikos with a little bit of bling, the SRPC 44 I think is a fantastic watch. Now that the SKX has been discontinued, the Turtles and the Samurais are looking really quite good. $265 I reckon is a bit of a deal for this one on that rubber strap. The strap code will obviously cost you an extra $100 and something on top of that if you so choose, but there's no need to invest straight away. The rubber strap that comes with the Seiko is pretty fantastic. If only they would fit it with some sapphire, but that's unlikely to happen. You can always do that yourself. There's plenty of vendors out there supplying crystal for the Turtle. Thanks for watching. I will see you soon.